Hey moms, welcome to episode 41 of the Front Parking Spot podcast. Today, my message is really simple. It's 5 quick ways on how to have a great marriage. I can't wait to share with you these tips. Stay tuned. Hello moms, welcome to the Front Parking Spot podcast. I am so glad you're here. I'm Jennifer Bosma, wife, mom, grandma, former teacher for 23 years, and now a Christian children's book author and your podcast host. Are you a faith-based mom trying to live out a Christian life for your family? Do you want to learn more ways that you can have power over your child's spiritual growth? Inside this podcast, you will find tried and true ideas to grow in your faith and be the best wife and mom you can be. So listen in as you're cleaning up, doing the drive, or matching that sock, and be encouraged to know that God has His front parking spot set aside for you. Hey moms, thank you so much for letting me be a part of your day today. Today, the topic is about marriage, and I am so excited to share with you some things I've learned along these 35 years of being married. Actually, today is my wedding anniversary, so I thought, what a great conversation to have with you moms while you're busy doing whatever you do during the day, whether you're doing laundry or making dinner or just cleaning up your family room for the 5th time of the day. But I wanted to give you some encouragement as you are in a very busy life. Your kids are busy, your job is probably very busy, and you have a husband. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about my advice for in a marriage, and especially after being married 35 years. And this is something that we can all stop and really reflect on and think about how well we are doing with these topics in our own marriage. Before we got married, we had a great priest who was going to marry us, and it was my parents' church that they had been going to in Vero Beach. And he was a popular priest. He was really fun. He was really kind of a little bit more, I like to say more progressive. He wasn't really, real strict with doing masses in Latin and all that. He was just really a priest that everyone really enjoyed hearing from. And he was going to marry us. And he was such a nice man. And we would have, back then, it was called engaged encounters. So before we got married in the church, we had to do these engaged encounters, just get to know topics that we would be talking about in marriage. And it was funny because it was run by priests. And a lot of you are thinking, okay, so how can a priest who's not married give advice? Well, the thing that's a little bit different about priests and pastors and anyone who is a pastor of a church is they actively seek the Lord. And we were a young couple. I was 22 when I got married and my husband was 23. We were just out of college, very young. We were so excited to get married, and it has been 35 years of a blessing. We've grown together. We laugh together. We have fun together. We go to church every week together. We're not actively going to the Catholic church, but we have a great church with a great pastor where we can grow in relationship with the Lord and not just necessary religion to really, so I tell you this, if you're not having a church home, look for a church where you can grow in a great relationship that you both really can get a lot out of in your family. Okay, that was a side note. But we were young, we got married young, and it has been the best thing for us. Every year we grow more in love. And I think the number one component is we have a lot of fun together. But let me back up to the advice that we were given from this priest before we got married. His first advice was this. He said, number 1, in a marriage, there are 5 key things you have to do. And these pieces of advice were so good that when I go to a wedding now, and when they have like the card table out and they have like little pens and paper or something cutesy, and it says, give advice to the married couple. Well, I always write these 5 things down, and I want to share them with you. And you can, even if you didn't hear this when you first got married, you can talk to your husband and implement these right now. The pastor, I believe his name is Pastor Mike. Pastor Mike said, there's 5 things. The first thing you have to do in a marriage to keep priorities straight is have God first in your marriage. And I was like, whoa, okay. I go to church I was raised Catholic, so I go to church every Sunday, keeping God first. I'm like, okay. And as my marriage has gone on, I realized keeping God first is, going to church, cultivating a relationship through Bible studies or small groups. anything like that. Yes, that's very important. But also reading good books that kind of spiritually guide you and reading the best book, which is the Bible. Right now, I'm doing the Bible recap with Tara Lee Cobble. We're in Isaiah. It is amazing. So side note for any moms out there, if you want to do a reading plan with reading the Bible through a year, the Bible recap with Tara Lee Cobble is amazing. You read the Bible through the year, and after you read it, she explains exactly what you read. It's unbelievably phenomenal. So besides reading the Bible, really investing your time with God first in your marriage. That would be like praying together and, not just at dinner, not just, saying your prayers before you have dinner, but start trying to say a prayer when you go to sleep at night. And then maybe, your husband is sharing with you some of his concerns or fears or worries at work, incorporate those in a prayer. And even if your husband doesn't join in right away, because sometimes it seems like women are more expressive in their faith and we kind of talk more about Jesus and what we've learned and, oh, God showed up today. And we're just kind of wired that way a little bit more. So, just start praying and lead yourself. Sometimes people say, well, I'm trying to make my husband more spiritual and he doesn't pray and he doesn't read his Bible. Well, moms, wives, what you need to do is you need to be the first ones to sit down and start growing your own faith. You start investing time in your Bible and in your Bible studies and growing in your own faith. Don't be pressing it on other people if you're not doing it yourself. So kind of start by leading, saying a prayer, initiating the prayer, and then over time, your husband will start to join you. And he'll say, oh, let's say our prayer tonight. It'll become normal. It'll become commonplace. So put God first in your marriage, whatever that looks like for you, whether it's taking a walk together at night, whether it's having that morning time in the morning before there's any cell phones or TVs or music or anything. Just have that time and initiate in your own self putting God first in your life. And then that will flow into your marriage as you share those prayers and the time that you have with God, with your husband. And I'm talking moms, like this does not have to be really long. Like a lot of us don't have a lot of time. A lot of you have like a brief couple minutes before your kids wake up, or especially now with school's getting ready to start, you're going to have busier mornings. Some prayer is better than no prayer. Okay. So, and at night, have your family say prayers together and you and your husband pray with your kids. So putting God first in your marriage is number one. Number two is putting your spouse first. Okay. Now, in a marriage, your spouse needs to become next. After God, it's your spouse. So it's your husband, moms. So what I'm talking about with this is when all your girlfriends want to go out for dinner. Hey, I'm not saying that's terrible. I mean, go out with your friends, okay, but don't let that time with your girlfriends replace time with your husbands. Spending time with your husbands, taking trips with your husband, make that a priority. Make it a priority to date your husband. Let your husband's needs be met. When you're making lunches for your kids, make one for your husband first, okay? And then you're going to make one for your kids as well. But when we put our husband's priority in front of our kids, yes, husbands can do things by themselves. Yes, they can make their own lunches. Yes, they can, do things in the house. They're not like needing your help like your kids do. But if you just do little things to put your husband and let him know he is a priority, that is so important. I've read a lot of places, especially with Focus on the Family. When my children were little, I really went to Focus on the Family for my go-to for being a better wife, being a better mom. And you can go to focusonthefamily.com. They have so many resources out there that talk about marriage. And marriage books there's so many. I mean, I just was searching before I did this podcast. I'm like, okay, what is the going, back when I was younger, we had Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And I'll talk a little bit about that at the end, but there's thousands of marriage books. But a great place to go to kind of top that list would be Focus on the Family, because they have a whole media and resource selections that they really recommend. And they have a lot of good podcasting and a lot of good resources for the family. And they're out of Colorado Springs. That's a little commercial for them. Definitely put your spouse and his needs first. Okay. Then comes your kids. Okay, your children come third to your spouse. Now, this is interesting. I've been married for 35 years, as I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast. I've seen a lot of friends that were married, and several of them have gotten divorced. And one common denominator in all of the marriages that I could see looking from the outside, and I'm sure there were things going on in the inside. From looking from the outside, a lot of it, I could see that the kids had taken the place of the spouse. Everything was the kids, what the kids were doing or what events they were doing or competitions they were going to. The kids really single-handedly filled the time away from the spouse. And that is really a slippery slope in marriages. Don't let your kids replace your time with your spouse. Your spouse is number one. And going back, number two, God, then spouse, then your kids. Another thing going with the spouse thing is I remember when my kids were in high school, a lot of the moms would get together and go and do spring breaks together while their husbands stayed home to work or whatever. My husband and I never did this. We always went as a couple on spring breaks. I didn't go with the girls on spring breaks. I mean, it wasn't just once in a while. It was every year. And so was I in their inner circle of friendships within those group of moms? No, because they had great friendships and stuff, but I chose to make my husband a priority and to spend time with them. And when we would go on vacations and if there were other, girlfriends down there, that's great. We'd all hang out. It wasn't like my husband and I were just by ourselves. We were with our kids and having fun with our family, but we were with each other. I didn't leave him back or he didn't leave me back and go on a trip without me. So that's why that's number two. So God, then your spouse. And number three, I was starting to talk about that, is your kids. Remember, moms, keep your kids in the third spot. Okay. It is frequently said that marriages that are really strong, their kids grow up really strong because the kids feel secure with seeing the security of their parents. So when you're investing in your time with each other, your kids will also see that you put each other as a priority. And that actually gives them a lot of security, and it gives them a lot of knowing that their home is stable and their home is safe and that there's a lot of love there. Because when you and your spouse are loving each other, then that's going to filter into your relationships with your kids. So please, moms, make sure that you don't put your kids' needs over your husband's needs. And there are times that kids' needs can creep in over your husband's. If your kids are sick or if you're dealing with something that's going on, that's a seasonal problem or something that has just sprung up. Sometimes kids need us and sometimes our spousal relationship will take a back seat, but that's not to mean it's all the time. So be aware. There's some times when your kids' situations or pickups or they're not feeling well or something that your kids or they're having a bad dream, that sometimes obviously spot on here and there, that's going to trump anything with your spouse. But just remember to keep that priority, keep your spouse a priority over your kids. The next thing is job. A lot of people, their jobs just run their life. Their job is their number one priority. This gets all mixed up. Like everything, they have their phone on 24/7. They don't put their phone away. They're answering emails at dinner. The phone is definitely something that we didn't have in our early marriage. So that, moms, I understand you guys have a different challenge with phones. I mean, I would think it would be weird when we would go to a restaurant and there'd be an older couple reading the paper together. I'm like, what are they doing? But that is no different than nowadays when you see a couple that are sitting for dinner, but they're on their phones, so really make sure that you keep your job. Do your job, do your best, give it your best from your working hours. Pick your working hours, whatever that is, whether it's 8 to 4, whatever your hours are. Be 100% at your job. Okay, but when it's time to leave your job. And I was a teacher. So teachers are famous for bringing all their stuff home. And I would do this periodically through the years. I'd bring it home, my stuff, and I wouldn't do it at home because I had my husband, I had my kids, I had to make dinner, I had to do laundry. And I learned that I'm not going to bring it home because I don't open it up anyways. So teachers, moms, whatever your job is, when you leave your office, or even if your office is in your home, don't go back to your computer. Do all you can to be present for your family. So jobs are number 4. They shouldn't come before God, your spouse, your kids. That's where jobs go in number 4. And the 5th one is hobbies. So many of us get a hobby that it becomes consuming and it takes over all of our free time, whether that's hunting, whether that's golfing, whether that's working out, whether all the time, whether that's doing some kind of hobby that it could be even on your phone. It could be even, podcasting. I mean, this could overtake people because it takes a lot of time to edit everything. Whatever your job is, real estate. So whatever your hobby is, real estate could be that you're always looking for a house. Your hobby is to look at houses. Whatever you do, just make sure your hobbies stay at the fifth spot. Do that when your other needs are met, okay? That was the advice of this priest. Now, sadly, this special priest who was awesome, he never got to marry us because he died of a heart attack right before we got married. And it was very upsetting that he wasn't there. We ended up getting married by Father John B. O'Hare, and he is no longer living. That was 35 years ago. He was an older Irish Catholic priest then. He was very traditionally Catholic. So we had that very, very long wedding, like an hour and a half. And I'm like, can we go to the reception? And it was a really sweet wedding, but it was very traditional. The message that Father Mike gave us before we got married with those 5 levels of priority, I have told that to every young couple I meet. And that once again, it's putting God first in your life, then your spouse, then your kids, then your job, and your hobby. If you keep those most of the time in your priority, your life will be in focus. Your foundation will be solid, and you will be able to move on and show love in your family and grow in your relationship from year to year. One more thing I wanted to share with you is moms and wives. Wives, you need to respect your husband. I've talked about this before. You want to respect your husband. You want to build him up. You want to encourage him. You want to tell him what a great job he is doing and how you appreciate it when he does XYZ, or that you think he's a good boss or a good employee. You want to build him up. Guys, men really want respect, and women, we want love. So I know one thing my husband does for me every morning still is he brings me my coffee, and it's just a little act of love. It's not anything major, but it's something I look forward to. And when he's not home and he doesn't bring me my coffee, or if he's out of town, I'm like, wait, I miss him bringing my coffee. And it's the little texts in the day and just the sweet things that he does. And that's how women get love. So those are some components too, that if you and your husband, you can have this discussion on what are we doing with those 5 priorities. Think of your hand: God, spouse, kids, job, and hobbies. What can we do together? Don't point fingers at him saying, oh, you're not doing this and you're not doing that. If he's not doing that, if you feel like he's not doing that for you, you're probably not doing that for him either. So sometimes we have to step back and take a good long look at ourselves before we just point the fingers at others. Like, what can we do to be better wives? What can we do to make our home more happy and stable? But the number one thing that we can do for our children and for our lives and for our husbands is to work hard on our marriage, date our husbands, go do fun things, get creative, put a little note in his lunch. And it's not too late to start that now. Just have fun together and do all you can. And if you don't have a lot of money to go on dates, take a walk or do a picnic or do something that's just different. You can mix it up by doing different things. You don't have to have dinner at your dining room table. You can go outside and have dinner on a picnic or dinner on the porch or somewhere else. Or just, you just ask God to give you some good vision and how to make your marriage fun. Well, these are just 5 pointers that have really helped me. And like I said, they're my go-to for when I go to a wedding and they want advice. But this has really kept us grounded, having these priorities in order, and it's really made us grow in our faith, in our family, and in our foundation for our lives. I'm looking forward to many, many years. My parents celebrated 60 years before my dad passed away, and my in-laws, I believe, are at 62 right now. So it's great to see how the older people in our generations, what works, and talk to them. Talk to the people in your family of what worked for them, or if they were in a marriage that didn't work, why it didn't work, and what they would do differently next time. Well, moms, I hope that this has encouraged you in your marriages. I hope that this gives you some inspiration. and that you can learn a lot from this. And I thank you. And once again, pray for your husband and pray for your marriage. You can ask for that prayer and you can ask that every day. God is there for you and He wants to bless you with a wonderful marriage. Thanks for listening in. Well, mamas, thank you so much for joining in. I know you are super busy doing all the things that can consume your day, but you took a couple of minutes to learn how God wants to build you up in your faith, family, and life, and He wants to applaud you for this. Please subscribe and review my show. This helps other moms tune in as well. I'd love to connect with you on Instagram at Front Parking Spot, on Facebook at Front Parking Spot Mom Community, or my website at jenniferbosma.com. Have an Ephesians 3:20 type of day, mamas, and be encouraged as you go for the front parking spot in your life today. God bless.